We've mentioned the blood moon during Smyrna, blood moon tetrad. We mentioned the one during Charlemagne, and we mentioned the other two that had to do with the Muslims. I think last week we covered it. We also looked at the rest of them. We've talked about the blood moon tetrad that happened last year. We talked about the one that happened in 1948 with the birth of Israel as a nation, and the one in 1967, which was the regaining of Jerusalem, right? There's only one other blood moon, and I bring it up right at this time because this is very interesting as well. In 1494, there was this other blood moon tetrad. This is the one right in the middle. And it's a time period that King Ferdinand and Queen Isabella of Spain ordered 200,000, which is basically all the Jewish people, to leave the country. Now here's the problem. That doesn't sound so bad, except for there's no homeland. And they were told, leave your house, leave your money in the bank, leave anything, and leave your furniture. You just get out of Spain. 200,000 of you with nowhere to go. Just get on the boat and get out of here. We don't want you. And that's the same time as this blood moon. And interesting that a total eclipse of the sun happened right after Passover as well. But another thing was right around this time, and that is Christopher Columbus. Well, why is Christopher Columbus important? Well, I mentioned it before, but you see a picture of him. This Christopher Columbus on the left, and here are his three boats. What were the ships called? Who remembers? The Nina. What was it?
Nina, Pinta, Santa Maria.
The Nina, Pinta, Santa Maria. Is that what you're going to say?
I couldn't remember the time.
Yeah. So there they are on the right-hand side. What does that have to do with anything? Price of eggs in China. Well, let's look. So here's Ferdinand and King Ferdinand and Queen Isabella in 1493, 1494, with the institution of the Roman Catholic Inquisition in Spain, and with the Dominican friar Thomas de Torquemada. Anybody ever seen The History of the World? Mel Brooks? And they're dancing around with the Inquisitor. As the first Inquisitor General, Torquemada, the Catholic monarchs, see, it wasn't all the monarchs, the Catholic monarchs pursued a policy of religious and national unity. Though Isabella opposed taking harsh measures against the Jews on economic grounds, Torquemada was able to convince Ferdinand. And so on 31 March 1492, the Alhambra decree for the expulsion of the Jews was issued. The Jews had until the end of July, which was 3 months, to leave the country. They were not to take with them gold, silver, money, arms, or horses. In other words, leave everything behind, just get out of our country. We don't want Jews. Well, interesting, here comes Christopher Columbus. On August 3, 1492, due to the Edict of Expulsion, all Jews were required to leave Spain. Boarding their vessels before midnight and sailing 1/2 hour before sunrise, Columbus and his crew set out of his now famous voyage. His historic voyage was financed by wealthy and influential Jews. How many ever heard that? See, that's not the story you were taught in grade school. You were taught that Ferdinand and Isabella financed it from the King and Queen of Spain, but that's not it. They were financed by wealthy and influential Jews. Many themselves were converts rather than a magnanimous King and Queen of Spain. The source of Columbus' motivation was his biblical view of scientific data as well as spiritual faith in the Scriptures. Wow, they never taught us that. But see, now there's historical records, even his own diary that they have. Columbus was more driven by prophecy than astronomy, which you've never heard before. He felt predestined, chosen for a mission. His name was Christopher. Christopher. Christ-bearer was his name. He felt this was evidence of his destiny. He compiled a collection of biblical passages in his Libro de las Profecias, which is the book, it means book of prophecies. Such was Proverbs 8:27, which speaks of the earth's surface as being curved. Isaiah 40, verse 22, the spherical earth, and the ocean current in Isaiah 43, so 43:16. He would later describe his discovery of the new world as the fulfillment of what Isaiah prophesied from Isaiah 24:15, isles beyond the sea, and Isaiah 69, verse 9. I don't have that up here. Was Columbus Jewish? Well, if he was, they didn't know it at the time. He claimed to be Catholic. What does this say? Columbus employed peculiar dates and phrases unique to the Hebrew people. For instance, instead of referring to the destruction or the fall of Jerusalem, he used phrases like the destruction of the second house, which is what a Jew would have said. The second house being the temple. He also employed the Hebrew reckoning of 68 AD instead of 70 AD when it talks to the destruction of the Jewish temple. Remember by Rome. A marginal note in his writing, I believe it's his diary, a marginal note dated 1481 is immediately given its Hebrew equivalent of 5241, which is the way the Hebrews, or the Jews, reckon time. He boasted that he was related to King David. Some of his letters were described as written in an unknown script, which today they believe may very well have been Hebrew, and he is said to have used a unique triangular signature similar to inscriptions found on gravestones of ancient Jewish cemeteries in Spain and southern France. In fact, some have said that Columbus was actually looking for a promised land that the Jews would have somewhere to go. Because he wanted to say, but he believed God raised him up to find this place where these 200,000 Jews could go. Obviously, he sold it as something else to the king and queen. But his faith that the world was round came from the Bible. The Bible says the earth is round. Remember, they all believed the earth was flat. They said, don't do that, you'll fall off the end. Remember? So scholars point to the date on which Columbus set sail as further evidence of his true motives. He was originally going to sail on August 2nd, 1492, a day that happened to coincide with the Jewish holiday Tisha B'Av, which is the 9th of Av, which marked the destruction of the first and second holy temples of Jerusalem. Then you'll hear the 9th of Av all the time when you're looking at Jewish stuff, because the Jews are like, we won't do anything on the 9th of Av. It's like Friday the 13th. It's something bad always happens. It was when the first, what is how coincidental is that the first temple was destroyed on an exact day as the second temple, the 9th of Av? Is that coincidence? There's no way. One was Babylon, the other one was the Roman Empire. You know, it was the same day. Anyway, he wouldn't go. See, he was originally going to sail on that day, but he postponed the original sail date by one day to avoid embarking on the holiday, which would have been considered by Jews to be a very unlucky day to set sail. Coincidentally or significantly, the day he set forth was the very day the Jews were by law given the choice of converting, leaving Spain, or being killed. That was their choices. The Jews could become Catholic, they could leave, or they could be killed if they stayed. And you can tell. You could tell that this is true. Columbus wanted to save his people. Columbus' voyage was not, as is commonly believed, funded by the deep pockets of Queen Isabella, but rather by two Jewish conversos and another prominent Jew, Luis de Santango, and Gabriel Sanchez, advanced an interest-free loan of 17,000 ducats for their own pockets to help pay for the voyage. Notice it was interest-free. See, nobody was trying to capitalize on this deal. They were giving him money to do it. They believed in what he was doing. Why? Because he was Christopher. His name was Christopher. He believed he was supposed to find this land. Indeed, the first two letters that Columbus sent back from his journey were not to Ferdinand and Isabella, who, if they would have financed it, you better believe he would have made sure that they were the first ones to get a letter, right? No. He sent it to Santajo and Sanchez, thanking them for their support and telling them what he had found. They have the letters. It's not like somebody's just making this. They have the letters. The evidence seemed to bear out a far more complicated picture of the man for whom our nation now celebrates a national holiday and has named its capital. Here underneath the picture here on the left hand, we say the annual fast day in Judaism, which commemorates the anniversary of the number of disasters in Jewish history, primarily the destruction of both the first and the second temples in Jerusalem, is that 9th of Av. There's something else going on here too, because if it wasn't for Christopher Columbus and his discoveries, would there have been the United States of America? Well, there would have been something eventually, right? But would it have been the United States of America? The timing had to happen. This is 1492. America has to be independent by the time of Napoleon, because that whole middle portion of our country they got from Napoleon. The Louisiana Purchase. A third of the United States was gotten because of Napoleon needed money, so he sold that to our country. And it's very important that our country, I believe our country is significant for last day prophecy. Our country is significant because we helped Israel so much. Of course, we help out the Muslims too.